what I did, what I did was focus on my nervous system state. And so the polyvagal theory is very useful for this, and just determining like where is my nervous system at. And that was the discovery that really helped me start making progress, was realizing that what everybody was doing, what the common theme among all of the recovery stories and all of the recovery programs that are available out there is understanding what it means to be in a parasympathetic nervous system state and maintaining that parasympathetic nervous system state throughout. So as I was looking at pacing, the key for me was figuring out how far I could push myself and maintain that parasympathetic state. And so whatever tool you're using, whether it's vagus nerve stimulation or symptom tracking or meditation or breathing exercises, polyvagal exercises, whatever it is that you're doing, the key is understanding that the purpose of it is to maintain that parasympathetic nervous system state.
Welcome to the Long COVID Hope podcast, the podcast that tells the more hopeful stories of people with long COVID. I'm your host, Sarah Evans, and today we have on the podcast Dr. Carissa Conrad, who is a PT, physical therapist, and is also now a strong advocate for vagus nerve support, in particular the use of a TENS machine. So Carissa comes and tells us all about her long COVID experience and what helped her, and how through the recovery process she's almost recovered with just a couple of underlying minor symptoms. She wants to tell you all about the TENS machine, and it was really good to have her on the podcast because obviously she can go into some detail about what's really happening with the vagus nerve and with vagal toning. So it's a great episode, and I hope you enjoy it. So let's get started. Hi, Carissa. Welcome to the Long COVID Hope podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
It's really great to have you here. So before we get
Yeah,
started, would you just like to introduce yourself, where you're located, and what you do, please?
sure. Yeah. So first of all, I just want to say thank you, Sarah, for having me on today. I remember very distinctly what it was like to be sick with long COVID and not know, what to do. And listening to recovery stories was really the key to maintaining hope, that there was a way out of this. So I'm always, I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my story, and I hope that it gives other people encouragement that there is a path out. So my name is Carissa Conrad, and I'm a doctor of physical therapy and a therapeutic pain specialist. And I offer international coaching services for recovery from long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome, among other things, using primarily a vagus nerve stimulation as the tool for recovery.
Amazing. Well, we'll talk all about that later. But first of all, let's dive into your own long COVID journey. So what were you doing before you caught COVID? What was life like pre-COVID?
Yeah, so I was definitely one of those people that was pretty driven and, kind of type A, I guess. I pushed really hard through my education and with my career. I started college young, graduated college young, got my doctorate in physical therapy before I turned 23. Lots of stress, lots of studying. And, when I got out in the workforce, worked hard. I worked 40 hours a week and then skilled nursing facility work on the weekends. And then had my kiddos and, they were not sleepers, didn't get a lot of rest. And so I was pretty worn down, even before I caught COVID. But I was doing my best. I had my son was small, nursing, awake a lot still. I mean, he used to wake up still like every hour wanting to nurse. Big baby, lots of demand on the physical body. So, yeah, I would say before I caught COVID, I already was feeling pretty run down, pretty exhausted, but just kind of thinking this is how it goes when you're a mom. And I was going to just get through it. It's that whole survival, just got to push through, and there will be a day where I get to sleep again, kind of an attitude. So, but I was active, I was exercising. I was with my kids, all day long, constant, young children as they are constantly demanding, and doing what I needed to do, and just surviving pretty much,
Yeah,
doing the mom
surviving.
thing.
You preach to the choir there. Like when
Yeah.
I caught COVID, I had a 8-month-old baby, so
Mm,
right back at you.
yes.
I'm fully
Yes.
aware of the sleep deprivation and trying to make it all work
Yep.
scenario.
Just doing the best you can. Yeah. The mom
Yeah, oh my
life.
goodness. And then COVID comes along. So would you
Yeah.
like to describe what happened with your first COVID experience then?
Yeah, so my COVID infection was pretty normal for, somebody of my age. I was 36, and, I had the 2 week long, yuck, and I was tired. I remember not feeling well, but, again, doing the mom thing, I didn't stop. I was still driving my daughter to and from school, which was a 30-minute drive. I was, still up in the middle of the night nursing my son. And then of course my kids got COVID. Thankfully, that didn't, for the little ones, it was kind of like a 48-hour thing. But, running up and down the stairs, checking on them, getting them their medicine or whatever, it just kind of, you just don't stop. And, and it was, after that kind of 2 weeks started to feel like that infection passed, but still felt kind of tired. And I remember deciding I was going to start just exercising a little bit, put my son in the stroller, going for a walk, and um, my legs felt heavy. And that was my first sign that something was probably not going the way I would want it to go. I wasn't quite recovering like I would have expected. So that was my first kind of, uh-oh. And I got in touch with a friend that I knew had had COVID before me, and asked, hey, did this happen to you? And it did not. And so I started to wonder, okay, what's happening now? Where is this going?
Yes, it's a bit disconcerting to say the least if something's, it doesn't feel right in your body and it's like
Mhm.
you feel like the infection's passed and yet here we are. Just remind me, whenabouts was this?
This was end of May 2022.
Right, okay.
Mhm.
Um, so obviously a couple of years into the pandemic, so the whole long COVID messaging was out there and things like that. So it's a little bit different than my experience when I in March 2020 when nobody knew what
Mm.
was happening at all. So what
Yeah.
happened then when you got home from your walk and you were feeling like tired and heavy and like what happened then? What did you do?
Yeah. I mean, I had no idea what to think. I didn't know what was going on. But I just thought, okay, just keep going, it'll clear up. Maybe I'll just be tired. My friend did tell me she felt kind of fatigued for, a couple of weeks after the infection. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll just be tired for a couple of weeks and then it'll go away. But instead, I just got worse. I started to feel more anxiety. It just felt like, and this is something that I hear echoed from the clients that I work with too, like just this feeling like you just can't handle anything. Like your kids are crying and suddenly it's like your nervous system is, through the roof. You feel this severe anxiety, and just like I just couldn't handle, just doing my basic things anymore. And that just kind of kept getting worse and worse. And, I was thinking, okay, I just need to go, see my old doctors, and, somebody will have something to help me. And I saw lots of different providers, and, did the supplement trials, tried everything, really thinking like something's just going to snap me out of this. Like, I'm sure. And instead, I just continued to worsen over the course of that summer. So I ended up going to stay with my parents, because I just could not manage getting through a day with my kids. And they helped me, take care of my kids. And I just tried to get rest, but of course I couldn't sleep. And so it just kind of was that downward spiral feeling where it just kept getting worse and worse. And I had no idea what to do. And I had heard of, I had heard of long COVID, certainly. But there wasn't really any information out there about how, like what it was or how to recover, or, and there were some long COVID treatment clinics, and but it still seemed like this kind of mystery at that point. And so I did find that the University of Washington had a long COVID clinic. And so I got signed up, to see somebody there. But of course, the wait list was about 6 months. So this is like August at this
Oh,
point. And so I got signed up for, to be on the wait list. And I think they called me in November to make the appointment for February or something like that. It was kind of that kind of thing. But yeah, so it was a long road of worsening symptoms, a lot of fatigue, a lot of anxiety. Um, and I had to come back home by the end of August because my daughter was going to be starting school, needed to get her ready, and my parents were still coming out, so they were coming out here to help me. And I live on the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State. So it's a ferry ride, to get out here. And my parents live on the other side of the water. So they were taking the ferry out. And and I just remember the kind of the worst day of things was when I went to see a doctor over on the other side of the water, had to take a ferry across. And that's a whole ordeal, a whole day. And the following day, when I was home, it was just like everything went dark. It was like that really like just doom kind of place where like I just don't see any way out of this. And I was so exhausted. I was in bed, and I couldn't tolerate lights or sounds or anything. And that was the worst point for me through the long COVID.
yeah, it's so hard. Like, mm, I've been there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's very scary and challenging. And so it sounds like when you did that, then that you had like a fatigue crash, and then you were in bed. Um, could you describe it a little bit more about like what's your experience of like the fatigue and just kind of when you were at your lowest ebb, like what it felt like in your body?
Yeah. I remember the first time experiencing the intense fatigue was when I traveled across to stay with my parents. So this was probably, I'm thinking this might have been like mid-July. Um, and I remember just, we got on the ferry and, I still at this point don't know what's wrong, right? So I'm just behaving as I normally would, even though I really hadn't left my house much since I'd gotten COVID, other than just to like drive my daughter to and from school. And so we get on the ferry, and then we would always, you leave the car and you walk upstairs, and I remember getting back in the car and feeling like, oh my God, I'm so sick. Why am I so sick? I just walked upstairs and back downstairs, and by the time I got to my parents' house, um, it was all I could do just to climb up the stairs and just get into a bed. And it just felt like there was, a 10,000 pound weight on my body. Um, and I just remember thinking like, this has to be dying, right? I don't have any other explanation for why I would feel like this other than I must be dying. Because it was like I could not even move. Like I was so exhausted, and it was a very scary experience. And for me now, with the understanding I have, I can see how I would go through kind of these cycles. And from what I was reading, it was like, oh, you have to push yourself a little bit and you got to pace. So every time you got to push a little bit more, push a little bit more. But I didn't understand why, or what I was doing. So I would push a little bit, and like I would try just to go outside, and I'd come back in and I would be feeling like panic, right? Like a panic attack or something just from walking outside. And then the next day I would have that fatigue and that kind of dark kind of that like hopeless feeling. And then I would feel a little bit better the next day or 2 days later, and then I would do it again. And I just kept doing that. And what I didn't realize is that I wasn't doing anything through that process to regulate my nervous system. I was pushing myself, but I wasn't actively calming my response. So then I just kept going through these cycles. And so each time I did that, I got worse. And the fatigue got worse and the doom feeling got worse. And so when I say I was at my worst by the end of this, that was like, I think that was maybe December or January when I went to go see that doctor and came back. It was like I had pushed myself to this point where it was just a really it was a very bad crash. That was the worst crash that I had.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to kind of get your head around when when you come down with chronic fatigue, because obviously it goes against like all the principles that we've kind of led our lives by, that like,
Mhm.
or you get tired, you go to bed in the morning, everything's better or whatever, but it's not. And
Right.
I can definitely relate to what you're saying about like the boom bust, and like
Hmm.
I also, when I wasn't pacing great, like I had a realization that I was basically pushing myself into a crash like every single day. And
Exactly. Yeah.
and I think like, and like as a parent as well, like it's so difficult because obviously you have a whole bunch of responsibilities, and your family needs you and everything, and so,
Hmm.
and like it is so easy to do too much and then crash out.
Right.
Can I ask, because if your child was like starting school, like obviously you didn't really understand what was going on, but like what did you say? Like how, like obviously this your child would not have understood, like must have been really, really tough.
Yeah, yeah, it was. So at this point, my son was almost 2, and my daughter would have been 7. So she was starting
Right.
second grade. And yeah, I mean, it was just mommy sick, I mean, I didn't know how else to explain it to her. And it was more difficult for her, I think, because it felt, like this change because my parents then were essentially taking over, her day-to-day care. Um, and my son kind of just, was having fun with grandpa, it was like playtime. So,
Yeah.
so it was, he did great with it. But yeah, it was hard to explain, and it even took my daughter a while after I recovered, just because she would say, well, you're always tired, mom, and I'm like, not anymore. Like I'm not always tired anymore. It was just that period of time. But yeah, there was just, I didn't know how to explain it to her other than, I'm doing the best I can and mommy's just sick. And thankfully I had, other people available that could help, and be a support system for her as I was going through that. But it is such a difficult thing as a parent, you want to give everything to your kids. You want to, be everything for them and meet their every need as much as you possibly can. And um, I felt so much guilt, for not being able to be there and just small things like not being able to be the one to take her to a birthday party. It was like there was no way I could have tolerated going to, a birthday party. And that's the age where you're still taking your kiddo and hanging out until the party ends. It's not
Yeah.
drop-off parties usually. And so my mom was the one that would take her to the birthday parties. And um, I really struggled with that. And that's something that when I'm working with coaching clients, I just, uh, my heart goes out to them, when you're a parent and you can't participate in those things with your kids. I mean, I missed every, conference, every school activity, I mean, all the things for her entire second grade year. I couldn't go to anything. I couldn't go to any of her little presentations in class, or I couldn't volunteer in the classroom, none of those things. And it was definitely heartbreaking. To just be sitting on the sidelines and watching. So it's a hard thing to go through.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of emphasize, yeah, the challenge when you've got small children is a whole other aspect of this. And thank goodness your
Yeah.
parents are fairly local.
Yeah.
That sounds like a really good help. So what happened then when you did start going to the long COVID clinic then? Were they helpful? Hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, I was lucky to I had a wonderful counselor, Margaret Piela, and she referred me to a wonderful naturopath, Dr. Jessica Corbet Harris, who's in Seattle. And she was able to get me started on low dose naltrexone. I probably started the low dose naltrexone with Dr. Corbet probably a couple of weeks, maybe 2, 3 weeks before I saw the doctor at the long COVID clinic at University of Washington. And the physician I was working with at the long COVID clinic She was like, "Oh, I'm so glad you started on low-dose naltrexone. Like that's what we give people basically, So at the long COVID clinic, that was the kind of the standard of care at that point anyway. So this is the beginning of 2023. And then the other thing that they generally give people is an SSRI. And so she had offered me SSRI, which is otherwise known as like an anti-anxiety medication, boosts your serotonin levels. And I was really hesitant to start on that, worried about side effects, worried about, if I ever wanted to go off of it at some point, withdrawal and things like that. And so I declined and wanted to just continue on the low-dose naltrexone. And my naturopath also gave me some other supplements and things. And the low-dose naltrexone definitely helped me. I felt like it kind of gave me that little glimmer. It was as though it just broke out of that really, really dark place for me. Like I was able to start seeing, okay, I could see how there's potentially a way out of this. Like this is not going to be the rest of my life. But being on the low-dose naltrexone, I pushed too hard again. I thought, okay, I can just go out and do things because it just kind of bumped me into feeling slightly more normal, and slightly more like my normal self. But I pushed too hard. And by the end of May, so this is now a year since my initial COVID infection, end of May, very beginning of June, I had a horrible crash again, and I was back on the couch. So I had gotten out of the house. I was driving my kids around trying to do things, and really, again, not understanding that I needed to pay attention to my nervous system and what was going on. And so back on the couch. And then I had a follow-up at that point with my physician at the long COVID clinic. And she, once again, just talked to me about options with trying an SSRI. And she's like, I really think if you just a really low dose, this is going to help you a lot. Cause she's like, your serotonin is in the toilet, like it just completely tanks when you have these conditions. So, as hesitant as I was glad that I took her up on that because it helped me, get off the couch again. And so that's what I always say about the two medications. They helped me get off the couch, and it was the vagus nerve stimulation that finally got me out of the house. So, where, I know also from working with people how difficult it is to even reason through, right? When you have long COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome, your nervous system is so dysregulated. Even just thinking clearly about what do I even do next? Like how do I even go about beginning a recovery? It's just not even in your bandwidth to process. So I felt like for me, the combination of those two medications helped balance my nervous system enough that I was able to start thinking a little more clearly. I was able to start drawing conclusions, seeing the parallels in the recovery stories that I was hearing. And that was really the key for me, was kind of starting to recognize, okay, there's a common theme here in what people are doing. And also for me, understanding the parallel between what I was experiencing and my prior education, because I had the knowledge and the experience to understand what was going on, but I just was not able to extrapolate that to my experience with the long COVID. And so I felt like that little boost from the medication started making me just making my brain feel like it was working a little more optimally. And that's when I started to see, oh, I get it. It's all of this training I had in pain neuroscience, which is what I studied for my therapeutic pain specialization, applied to the situation with long COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome. It's the same process that's occurring in the brain. The brain is giving an over-the-top response to stimulus. And in the case of chronic pain, it's a stimulus coming from within the body, right? The brain is determining that or deciding that the input coming from the knee, for example, if somebody has chronic knee pain, is a threat to your survival, and it's giving you a continued pain experience that is exaggerated. It's more extreme than it needs to be based on the tissue damage, and that's because the brain is very good at learning, and the brain is very good at threat detecting and protecting you, and so in our case with the long COVID and the chronic fatigue syndrome, it's giving you an over-the-top response to stimulus, whether that be external, like lights or sounds, or kind of internal, like your activity level. And so when I saw that parallel, I was like, okay, got it. Like that's what's going on. And I need to start dealing with my nervous system and start pacing my activity, and through that process, paying attention to what information my nervous system is giving me about what state it's in. And that was when I also discovered the vagus nerve stimulation and started really making progress.
Great. So for the vagus nerve stimulation, was that with a TENS machine? Or
Yes.
like how did, yes. Hmm.
Yeah. So I had heard about vagus nerve stimulation in one of the recovery stories, and it was kind of this um, like she just mentioned it, like, yeah, and I started doing vagus nerve stimulation, and it just was one of those things that stuck in my brain. And I think when you're recovering from conditions like this, you pay attention to those things. Like if something sticks in your brain and kind of, it's resonating in some way with you. Um, and so I started exploring that, and I'm like, okay, what is this about? What could I use for vagus nerve stimulation? And I came across using a TENS unit. And physical therapists use TENS units all the time. This was something I was very familiar with. All the way back from graduate school, we learned how to use a TENS unit, and typically you use it for pain control, and that's how most people's experience with TENS units is for local pain modulation. And you put 4 electrodes on your skin around the area of pain, and you turn on the unit, and you get this little buzzing sensation. And there are different settings you can use, and all this. And what that does is it gives the nervous system an experience of a sensation that helps the brain temporarily determine that the other sensations it's been getting from that area are not so threatening to your survival, and it decreases the pain experience. So I had to do some research on, how I would set the parameters for vagus nerve stimulation using a TENS unit. And I bought all the components, ear clips, went through some trial and error with those, and finally found ones that were working. And the first day I clipped everything on, and it was like my whole nervous system just finally felt like this relief, like just this, oh my gosh, wow, I forgot what this feels like, this calm experience. And so at that point, I was still very dysregulated. I was in a very sympathetic overdrive state, lots of anxiety still, and just kind of functioning in that like crazy anxious place. So when I clipped that on and I felt that calming sensation, I was so relieved. And I did 15 minutes of stimulation and took it off. And within minutes, I was right back up into that, crazy sympathetic overdrive state again. And so then 45 minutes later, I put it on again, 15 more minutes. And then I would take it off and I'd bounce right back up. And I just kept doing that. And it took about a week or so. And I started to feel like, okay, I'm feeling a little more regulated. Like my nervous system feels a little calmer. It feels like I am staying in that calmer state for longer periods of time and not bouncing back up into that sympathetic state. And so then from there, I just started kind of building use of the stimulation, kind of building what I now call my protocol with utilizing vagus nerve stimulation. And it was from that point, it took me about 8 months from the point of discovering vagus nerve stimulation to get from essentially being couch bound, certainly housebound, to the point where I was working part-time again. So that was pretty quick, all things considered. And then about another 10 months after that, I was able to start exercising. So, and now I consider myself, pretty much, I would say I'm like 90% recovered. I am back to all of my, normal physical activities. I can exercise, I can work full time, I can take care of my kids, I can do everything that I want to do. I still have a little bit of brain fog, and would love for that to go away at some point. And I think it will. It's just a matter of continuing to learn to regulate my nervous system, and manage my stress well with 2 kids. So.
Yes. Wow, amazing. Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of long haulers trying TENS machines, and it's like that particular clip on the earlobe
Mhm.
situation. I'm so glad that it really, really helped you. You also mentioned about getting better at pacing. So alongside the TENS machine, were you also finding a bit more about how to pace yourself then?
Yeah, and the using the vagus nerve stimulation really like projectiled me, forward in terms of progress and progressing my activity tolerance. So I didn't have to think as hard about pacing, but what I did, what I did was focus on my nervous system state. And so the polyvagal theory is very useful for this, and just determining like where is my nervous system at, and that was the discovery that really helped me start making progress. Was realizing that what everybody was doing, what the common theme among all of the recovery stories and all of the recovery programs that are available out there is understanding what it means to be in a parasympathetic nervous system state and maintaining that parasympathetic nervous system state throughout. So as I was looking at pacing, the key for me was figuring out how far I could push myself and maintain that parasympathetic state. And so whatever tool you're using, whether it's vagus nerve stimulation or symptom tracking or meditation or breathing exercises, polyvagal exercises, whatever it is that you're doing, the key is understanding that the purpose of it is to maintain that parasympathetic nervous system state. And that was really the game changer for me, because I had tried all those things, and I wasn't getting anywhere. And it was because I hadn't made that connection yet, that there's what the goal is, what the point of doing that is. And so when I started keeping track of my nervous system, that's when I started really making progress.
Amazing. I'm just thinking, in case anyone's listening to this and they don't know really what you're talking about,
Sure.
could you give a little like summary of the vagus nerve and its function,
Yeah. Yeah,
please? That'd
absolutely.
be good.
Yeah. So your vagus nerve, you have two of them. They start at your brainstem and then come down the sides of your neck and then down into your torso. Your vagus nerve contains 75% of your parasympathetic nervous system's nerve fibers. So this is the majority of your parasympathetic nervous system is contained in your vagus nerve. And your vagus nerve regulates essentially every automatic process in your body. So everything that you don't have control over, like your heart rate, your blood pressure, your digestion, your pancreatic function. It has fibers that affect like I said, your pancreatic function. It affects your blood sugar levels. Pretty much everything that you can think of. There's an interaction between your vagus nerve and your HPA axis, so hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And through the vagus nerve's interaction with that axis, it modulates and regulates your release of inflammatory cytokines. So there's all these things that are happening in the body that are regulated by the vagus nerve. And for many people who, for those of us who are kind of born a little more sensitive, I definitely consider myself one of those. I was a sensitive kid. Oftentimes we have less tone in our vagus nerve to begin with. And all that means is that there's less activity in your vagus nerve. So your vagus nerve is not very active, and you might tend to be a little more hypervigilant. And those of us who, again, kind of that type A personality. And then, experiences in childhood can also decrease the tone of our vagus nerve. So if, any kind of childhood trauma experiences are going to affect the vagus nerve activity. So when we stimulate the vagus nerve using like a TENS unit, or, there are vagus nerve stimulation devices that are available for purchase on the market as well. They are all essentially TENS units. It's the same concept, just packaged a little differently, and electrodes that might contact different locations of the vagus nerve. The most common locations that you would contact when you're doing vagus nerve stimulation are the auricular branch of the vagus nerve, which is the one that I utilize, which is in your ear. And then there's also either side of the neck. So you might see vagus nerve stimulation devices on the market that wrap around the neck, and there's electrodes that contact at the neck. And so when I recovered using vagus nerve stimulation, I started doing more research on, what does the vagus nerve do and what does vagus nerve stimulation help with? And I was just fascinated by the number of conditions that there are research studies on utilizing vagus nerve stimulation. I mean, it's really incredible. Everything from cancer to Parkinson's disease to hypertension, high blood pressure. There are extensive research studies on this, that stimulating the vagus nerve enhances, all optimal function of all of these systems in the body, and people get better. So it's pretty remarkable. And so so I have worked with people with gut conditions. That's another one. Any kind of IBS, IBD, Crohn's. People with going through cancer treatment, doing vagus nerve stimulation as an adjunct treatment. There's good research to support that is beneficial in both decreasing the side effects from chemotherapy as well as improving outcomes. And it has to do with the fact that the vagus nerve also improves or modulates immune function. So if we're stimulating our vagus nerve, our immune system activity is going to be optimized. And of course, and then the decrease in inflammation. So essentially, poor immune function and inflammation are at the root of all illness. That's kind of what it comes down to. So, so when we stimulate the vagus nerve, we're improving the function of our immune system and decreasing inflammation, and we improve our health. So, pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, really fascinating. And obviously, like long COVID is a complex condition to say the least, and there's
Yeah.
also is also an umbrella term for several different presentations of different symptoms. Like,
Yeah.
what kind of degree do you think that like what percentage do you think of long haulers have some sort of vagal nerve dysfunction or going into the automatic nervous
Mm.
response?
Yeah. I mean, uh, I think regardless of what your symptoms are, dysautonomia is at the base of, the long COVID experience. And the, yeah, the symptoms, it's interesting how people have, kind of different symptoms, but for the most part, I think pretty much everybody has, and whether or not it's, I guess, whether or not it's an issue of vagal tone, would be harder to determine, but I think that the dysautonomia being the relevant component is the important piece. So the use of the vagus nerve stimulation is to help retrain your brain, essentially. So you can think of it like um, like again, like your brain is perceiving normal stimulus as a threat to your survival. So the process of recovery is retraining your brain that these experiences and this stimuli is safe, that it's not going to kill you, right? I mean, that's essentially what your brain is behaving as though. And so, so in those cases, you are you're using the vagus nerve stimulation to maintain that parasympathetic state so that your brain no longer perceives these experiences or this stimulus as a threat. So it's a kind of it works for everything. I mean, uh, it's the retraining the brain part that the vagus nerve stimulation is helpful for.
Yeah,
That makes
yeah. I
sense.
mean,
Yeah.
it makes total sense to me. I mean, I never tried a TENS machine, but I definitely learnt about the parasympathetic nervous state and how I needed to calm my nervous system down. And for me, it was more around a guided meditation, pranayama, breath work, and things like that. And also a
Hmm.
lot of like affirmations and like just trying to kind of just calm my mind and the nervous system down. But yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from on this. And obviously this is a bit more of like like a medical device approach sort of thing.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's the same concept basically about improving vagal
exactly.
tone and yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm so glad that you found something that really just moved the needle for you.
Yeah.
And then, so you, how long do you think you were using the tenacity until you felt like you had actually fully recovered then from long COVID?
I think, well, like I said, I consider myself at this point like 90% recovered because I
Okay,
still have a few
sorry. Yeah.
symptoms. Yeah, no, that's
All
fine.
right.
But yeah, so at this point, it's been, gosh, so 2 years and 3 months since I found vagus nerve stimulation. And I still use the vagus nerve stimulation, and my purpose of using it now is different than it was when I was recovering from long COVID. Vagus nerve stimulation also enhances neuroplasticity. So when I'm thinking about, so now I'm in a place where I can, I'm, my nervous system is regulated, and so I can better look at those things like how I react to things and why is my nervous system pushed into a fight or flight state when my kids are fighting, or when my son is crying, or whatever the case may be. And so I now, if I feel triggered, like, if I have an emotional trigger, I will clip on the vagus nerve stimulation and kind of just sit back. And that allows me to get distance from that trigger and think about, why is my brain going into this fight or flight state, and how can I think of this experience differently so that I am not, so that I'm not triggered next time. And I've made so much progress in my own, kind of healing journey, emotional healing journey by using vagus nerve stimulation. And so much progress in the last, like 9 months, since I would consider myself, pretty much fully recovered, or at that 90% point, if we want to say, since I still have some symptoms, by like January of this year. So it was about a year and a half total, because January was when I was able to start exercising. I could even jog. I can jog 3-4 miles now. And so then it's been, okay, well now, now I want to use this to help catapult me towards more of my emotional healing as well, and addressing kind of some of those patterns of behavior that led me to, developing long COVID in the first place. How can I be in the world in a way that supports my emotional health and, allows me to be the mom I want to be, and, the coach I want to be, and all the things the partner I want to be, et cetera, all the things I want to do in this world. And so I love it for that too, that there's kind of this like I call it kind of like this survival period where it's just, I got to get my nervous system regulated again. I got to get back to my life and my activity level that, I need to get to. And then I could and then once I got there, then it's like, okay, now I can dive into some of these behavioral patterns and triggers, et cetera.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. And you mentioned about returning to exercise. Like, how did you do that? Did you start off small and gradually add, or
Yes.
what happened for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I always encourage people, get to the point where you can do your activities of daily living, we call them, without your symptoms worsening. So get to that point where, like I wanted to get to the point where I was working 20 hours a week. I was able to do all the things that I wanted to do for my kids. I could go to any of their activities, no problem. I could cook, I could clean, I could, oh my gosh, something like folding a whole basket of laundry. I don't know why that was so hard. That was one thing.
Yeah.
It's so funny how there's certain things like that, right? Like folding a whole load of laundry took forever to get to that point where I could do that. I mean, I could drive, I could do all these things, but for whatever reason, folding a load of laundry took a long time for me to be able to get through a whole load without my symptoms getting worse. So all of those things, be able to do those first. And then I started looking at exercise, and I started small. I started with, walking 10 minutes, and then I just built from there. And I actually hadn't run in a long time because of I had an old injury and stuff, but I think all of the things that I was doing to support my nervous system through the recovery from long COVID helped with with the pain I had been having. And so I was able to go back to running. And again, I started small with running, so I got to the point where I could walk for an hour before I started running. And then I ran, for like 5 minutes. You just keep building it. So just like anything else, it's that pacing. And again, I utilized the vagus nerve stimulation through that process of returning to exercise as well. And the vagus nerve stimulation is an incredible tool. And just like any other tool, it's how you use it that really makes the difference. And so that's why, I've developed the protocol that I've developed, and offer the coaching services, because, how you use it really makes all the difference in how you progress. So.
Hmm. Do you want to t tell us a bit more about your coaching service then that you offer?
Yeah. So I offer one-on-one, coaching for long COVID recovery internationally, all over the world. I've got people I've talked to. It's fun, getting to speak to people in many different countries. And so, and via my website, I have available for purchase vagus nerve stimulation kits with TENS units. So that's CarissaConradDPT.com. The kits, I have two different options. One is a TENS unit that you can go a little more slowly with. So for me, I think, that when I started with the vagus nerve stimulation, like I had said, I got a little boost from the medications. And so I was able to jump right in with quite a bit of stimulation. I was able to do a sensory level and use it quite often during the day. And for others, if you are more sensitive or more ill, it's good to kind of start low and slow. So I have kind of the low and slow option, and then I have an option that's for those of us who are a little more our nervous systems are a little more regulated. But regardless of which option you choose, I've coached people starting from 30 seconds of stimulation up to, the full amount that I recommend as part of my protocol. So those are available, and those TENS units are already set with the parameters for vagus nerve stimulation, because that can be kind of the part of the tricky part is kind of determining how to set the TENS units. And then along with that, so when you purchase one of those kits, I have a video series that you get access to that goes through my entire protocol and how to use the stimulation to assist in making progress. And then as an option, I'm available for that one-on-one coaching to help get you started. I utilize that polyvagal theory quite a bit, the polyvagal chart, super helpful. And it's all about, this initial phase is about regulating the nervous system and then learning how to pace yourself and progress your activity using the vagus nerve stimulation as your tool to maintain that parasympathetic nervous system state. So it's about that consistency, the timing, and teaching the nervous system how to re-regulate itself. That's really the key for making progress, regardless of, what tool you're using.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious, like, because obviously your background's in PT, like, how did you decide, or like, why did you decide to go into this service? Like, was it through your long COVID journey that you have like pivoted a little?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, when I was training for my therapeutic pain specialization, this was actually in 2020. I was getting my therapeutic pain specialization training. So
Right.
right as COVID was hitting. And we touched on, there was just like a one little, maybe one slide on chronic fatigue syndrome. And I remember in that slide, it said something like, some studies show recovery is possible, and the treatment protocols the treatment suggestions were things like cognitive behavioral therapy and pacing, and that was it. There was no other information about it, right?
Mm.
And so I was scared. I remember being very scared when I kind of realized that long COVID was a version of chronic fatigue syndrome. I was like, okay, well, we were not taught, we weren't taught how to really help people with that. And so it's the place of not knowing what to do is very scary. And so I always said, when I get through this, first of all, I'm going to find a way out of this, and I'm going to help people figure out how to find their own way out, because it just takes your life away, and it's the worst feeling. And so I wanted to figure this out, figure out how to apply it to everybody else, and how I can help people recover. And so it's really, it's really become a passion of mine, especially using the vagus nerve stimulation, and I just want as much information to get out there for people as possible, because it is such a misunderstood condition. And so there is absolutely a way out of this, and it's just knowing what to do, right? That's the key. And not feeling so alone. So,
Yes, 100%. It is a really lonely a place when you're in the trenches, for want of a better
yeah.
word, of long COVID or chronic fatigue. Yeah, and I think it's quite, it seems to be quite common. Certainly my my own experience was that when I felt better, I was like I had like fire under my feet, and I just really wanted to try and help as many people as I possibly could to also
Yeah.
recover, sort of
hmm
thing. And it sounds like you had a similar um kind of train of thought around it. And it's
Yes.
so nice. It's so nice to offer these services because obviously there's so many people out there who need some help with this.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit about what your life looks like now? You said you're about
Yeah.
90% better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm working definitely full time, at this point, and I can do everything. I exercise, and I go to all of my kids' events now. That is, one thing that when you come to the other side of this, that gratitude, right, of feeling like I get to go to my kids' basketball games. I get to go to the parent-teacher conferences. I get to go stand there, even just standing there in the morning to drop my son off. My son, so my son's almost 5 now, and he started what we call the transition to kindergarten program, which is a full-time school program at the elementary school. And I get to walk him up and stand there and, give him big hugs and kisses and send him into his class. And uh, it's the best feeling, and be there to pick him up. Um, have him, do the cute little wave behind as he's walking in, and all the things. I missed all that for a year, and so I'm so grateful to be able to be there, watch my kids succeed, and just be 100% mom and do the work I'm doing, and just have life, and I I still take care of myself, and I think that's the lesson, through this, is, you start learning how to recognize when your nervous system is struggling, and if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not getting good sleep, your body lets you know, right? So, I still pause in the middle of my day and do a meditation. I still use my vagus nerve stimulation. Like I said, it's still part of my like wellness routine. Vagus nerve stimulation has many health benefits, whether you're ill or not. So, I still do that. I still do my breathing. I actually have a really wonderful breathwork meditation track available on my website. I collaborated with a wonderful professional musician and producer, Ray Schloss, and that's a really great meditation track that you can use either with your vagus nerve stimulation or without. And this is the kind of breathing that I did and I still do. So yeah, I just, I'm doing life, and it feels wonderful to be back at, my capacity that I was before, but in a different way. I have a different outlook on life and different goals and different way of just being in the world. So I'm grateful for that.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad for you. Sounds really, yeah, really nice. After everything you've just talked about and what you've been through, I'm just, yeah, really glad to hear that you're doing this well.
Thank
What
you.
other, would you say is the 10% remaining then for you? Like what still is lingering, could I ask?
Yeah, so it's just between the brain fog, and then the other thing is I ended up with blurry vision. I don't know if anybody else has the blurry vision thing, but it's I haven't entirely figured that one out. It's uh I remember the day it came on. I remember I was driving, and all of a sudden, it just feels like kind of like if you've it's an autonomic nervous system thing. It's like, like alcohol affects your autonomic nervous system. So it very much feels that way. Like if you've had a few drinks of alcohol and your vision is not as clear. I just still have that symptom. And so, yeah, so I think that's kind of they're just remaining symptoms lingering. But I have moments where the brain fog is better, and moments when it's worse. And so that tells me that there's, just still more regulation that I have to do. I really look at this like it is like this inflammatory, and that's actually what, the physician at the long COVID clinic at University of Washington said, that, they think that there is this inflammatory process happening in the nervous system. And, our emotions are either inflammatory or not. That's kind of, so when we are stressed, we release cortisol, we release these more inflammatory cytokines, versus when we're in that parasympathetic state and we have lots of activity in our vagus nerve, we don't have as much inflammation, right? So I just continue to work on, a healthy nervous system and being in that parasympathetic state as much as possible. And I think, and I do see some shifts happening in that brain fog. And I think part of the reason I still have some symptoms is because I was so focused on just getting my activity level, to the point where I could do what I needed to do to take care of my kids, to be working, to be active in the world, all those things. So, and I didn't necessarily let my symptoms resolve before I pushed to the next step, because I was like, I just got to get to the point where I can take my kids to school. And so now I have more space where I'm more regulated, and I can, do more things to let those last symptoms kind of resolve. So it's happening. It's just, you get to that. I think that's common too. I hear that, that people get to kind of this 90% point and they're like, oh, I still have a few things that are going to resolve, surely.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get there. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. It's a really like a really inspirational story, and it's so nice to hear about your coaching and TENS machine vagal stimulation
Yeah.
services that you're offering to people. So just to wrap this up then, is there anything you'd like to say to those listening that are struggling with long COVID still?
I think, the big thing is, first of all, there is absolutely a way out, 100%. And it's just a matter of finding what works best for you for regulating your nervous system. Having some help along the way is certainly, is huge. And just knowing that you're not alone, and that you don't have to do this by yourself, and just find, what resonates with you. And, if my story has resonated with you and, the tools that I offer, please do get in touch. But just know, that no matter what, there is a way out of this. It's just a matter of your brain making these connections, figuring out, those aha moments of like, I got it. It's the nervous system piece, and knowing that there are lots of tools out there and finding what works best for you. So don't lose hope. Keep listening to things like this, and stories that, give you that encouragement. And you will get to the other side of this.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Long COVID Hope podcast. We sincerely hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Please note that we are not medical professionals and this does not constitute medical advice. Always speak to your doctor or medical professional before starting any new treatments, supplements, or new exercise routine. If you would like to support the podcast, please do me a favor and give a 5-star rating and review, and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast client and on social media. It would help so much if you were also able to share the podcast episode you've enjoyed with a friend. Next, if you have the ability to do so, please do sign up as a Patreon member. And all Patreon members receive access to all of the video episodes, as well as receiving all episodes 1 week earlier and other member benefits. Go to patreon.com/.